The soft glow of the afternoon sun bathed the living room in a golden hue as I sat on the couch, scrolling through emails on my laptop. Life had been good, simple and drama-free, and I'd worked hard to keep it that way. That simplicity, however, had been disrupted earlier that week when my boyfriend, Ethan, stumbled upon the truth: my family was wealthy. Not just comfortable, but extraordinarily, eye-wateringly wealthy. I'd always avoided bringing up the topic of money. To me, it was irrelevant to our relationship. Ethan and I met in college, bonded over late-night study sessions, and fell in love over cheap pizza and walks in the park. My family's fortune, amassed through generations of business ventures, wasn't part of that equation. But now, the cat was out of the bag. Ethan burst through the door, his face flushed with anger. He dropped his bag on the floor and crossed his arms, glaring at me. "Why didn't you tell me?" he demanded, his voice trembling. "Why did I have to find out from someone else?" I closed my laptop, setting it aside. "Ethan, calm down. What are you talking about?" "Your family," he snapped. "Your very rich family. Why didn't you ever mention it?" I sighed, feeling the weight of the conversation settle heavily on my chest. "Because it's not important. It's not who I am." Ethan let out a bitter laugh. "Not important? Are you kidding me? I've been struggling to pay rent, to keep my car running, to afford the basics, and all this time, you could have helped me? You didn't think that was important?" His words stung. Ethan was fiercely independent, a quality I'd always admired about him. I'd thought he'd feel insulted if I offered financial help. Apparently, I'd been wrong. "I didn't want our relationship to be about money," I said carefully. "I wanted us to build something real, not based on my family's wealth." "Real?" he echoed, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Do you even understand what I've been going through? The stress? The sleepless nights? And you just sat there, watching me struggle?" I opened my mouth to respond, but hesitated. Was that what I'd been doing? Watching him struggle? In my effort to keep money out of the equation, had I inadvertently hurt him, Ethan? I started, but he cut me off. "Do you even care about me?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Because it sure doesn't feel like it right now." That question hit me like a punch to the gut. Of course, I cared about him. I loved him. But how could I explain my perspective without sounding like a privileged fool? "I do care about you," I said softly. "That's why I didn't want money to come between us. I didn't want you to feel like you owed me anything." He shook his head, pacing the room. "This isn't about owing you. This is about trust. You hid something huge from me. How can I trust you now?" I stood up, trying to bridge the distance between us. "Ethan, I didn't hide it to hurt you. I hid it because I didn't want it to define us. I wanted you to love me for me, not for my family's money." "And what about love being a partnership?" he countered. "Aren't we supposed to support each other?" I took a deep breath, willing myself to stay calm. "You're right. I should have been more open with you. I'm sorry. I've seen what money does to people. It changes relationships, and I didn't want that to happen to us." "Changes relationships?" he barked. "What about the fact that you've already changed ours by hiding this? Do you know how humiliating it feels to find out your girlfriend's family could buy the apartment building we live in and not even blink?" I flinched, his words cutting deeper than I expected. "I didn't mean to humiliate you, Ethan. I wanted us to be equals." "Equals?" he repeated, his voice rising. "You don't think watching me scrape by while you're sitting on a safety net bigger than I could dream of makes you look down on me? Did you think I wouldn't find out? Did you think I'd just keep playing the role of the struggling boyfriend while you played pretend?" Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "I wasn't pretending. I love you, Ethan. That hasn't changed." "Hasn't it?" he shot back. "Because it feels like you've been lying to me this whole time." I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. I didn't tell you because I've seen what money does to people. Friends who disappeared once they got a taste of it. Relationships that fell apart because money became the focus. I didn't want that to happen to us. But it's happening anyway, he said bitterly. And now I'm left wondering if I even know who you are. The room fell into a heavy silence, broken only by the sound of Ethan's uneven breathing. He ran a hand through his hair and turned toward the door. I need to get out of here, he muttered. I need to think. Ethan, please don't leave like this, I pleaded, my voice breaking. We can figure this out. Don't let this tear us apart. He paused in the doorway, his back to me. I'll let you know when I'm ready to talk. And with that, he was gone. The following days were agony. Every text I sent went unanswered. Every phone call went to voicemail. I replayed our argument over and over. Wondering if I could have handled it differently, wondering if I'd lost him for good. When Ethan finally called, his voice was distant. We need to talk, he said. But I'm not sure things can go back to the way they were. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, I said, desperation creeping into my tone. I love you, Ethan. Please, let's figure this out. Love isn't always enough, he replied, his words like a dagger to my heart. But I'll come over tomorrow. We'll talk then. The next day, as I waited for him to arrive, I felt a mix of hope and dread. Our relationship was on the line, and I wasn't sure if love could overcome the chasm that had opened between us. When Ethan finally arrived, his expression was guarded, but his eyes softened the moment they met mine. I stood, trembling, unsure of how to bridge the gap between us. Ethan, I whispered, stepping closer. I'm so sorry. I never meant to hurt you. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I know you didn't. But it still hurts. I reached out, tentatively placing a hand on his arm. I love you, I said again, my voice steady, despite my tears. Not the kind of love that's conditional or fleeting, but the kind that's messy and real. The kind that wants to fight for us. He looked down at my hand, his jaw tightening. You should have trusted me enough to let me in. I know, I admitted. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you, if you'll let me. For a moment, the silence stretched between us, taut and fragile. Then, Ethan pulled me into his arms, holding me so tightly it was as if he feared letting go. I love you too, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. But we have to be honest with each other. No more secrets. No more secrets, I promised, clutching him like a lifeline. As we stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, I felt the weight of the past few days lift. We had a long way to go, but for the first time since our fight, I felt hope. Together, we could weather any storm.